Good people, good people, good people. Welcome back to the Gumptown Podcast, episode 154. I'm Doug B. If you tuned in to this podcast, thank you for your time and your attention. I really appreciate you giving it a shot. Today's guest is the founder and owner of Village Maternal Services. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm sure we'll all be inspired by her story. Let's chop it up with Adiliah Smith. Adiliah, how's it going?
All is well. All is well.
Glad to hear that. First things first, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to chop it up with me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, here to talk about all the great things you're doing with Village Maternal Services. But before we talk about the business, let's get to know the woman behind the brand. Born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, what was your upbringing like?
My upbringing was, pretty good. I like to think I had a good life coming up, which made for a good foundation for me to launch into adulthood. I'm the middle child of seven, a great big seven. Grew up with my siblings in the home with my mom and my dad. Graduated from Bedford High School, 2004. And life was just good. I lived a kid life. I didn't have anything strange or unusual going on, and I am grateful for that.
Yes, ma'am. That's powerful stuff. And just hearing you talk about being the middle child of seven, mom and dad, sounds like you had a great village growing up.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Powerful stuff. So you finished up school in Cleveland, and what led to you choosing the Alabama State University to do your college at?
So, so interesting background.
Mhm.
So in Ohio, there are HBCUs there, but HBCU culture there is not like it is in the deep South, like the home of HBCUs. I always knew I wanted to be in the South, but what led me on my path of even looking into HBCUs, because I looked everywhere from Texas to North Carolina and everything in between. I don't know if you recall the show on BET called Hits from the Street.
Yes.
On Hits from the Street, yes. On Hits from the Street, the guy do hits. He would always go to different college campuses, like at some point. And so I would just look and be like, oh, what is that? And where is that? And it looked like what they had going on was something that I was going to be interested in having going on myself. That's what, I learned more about fraternities and sororities. And although I'm not a part of one, I learned that that was a thing. Like I would kind of see the stuff just a here and there a little bit growing up, but I didn't really pay it any mind because it wasn't a very, very heavy influence or prevalence where I'm from or amongst my family. And so I kind of started to get immersed and I got interested just from watching TV. The programming on BET was a lot different then than it is now.
Right.
And so, look, I would get on my little dial-up connection on AOL. You got 1,000 hours for the month, and I would just be punching stuff in on the computer, and it was moving slow. But I was researching schools, and that's where I knew. That's how I knew I was going to an HBCU. I didn't care where I applied to. I knew I was going to an HBCU, and what made it be Alabama State was my mom was okay with me being that far because we have family in Alabama. My dad was okay with me being that far because his family in Alabama. My dad was 100% pro HBCU, like PWI for what? It was 100% pro HBCU, where my mom was kind of like, I don't know. But my dad told me I wasn't going to Texas, so don't ask.
Mm.
But Alabama State was the perfect choice for me. It's worked out so well. I don't regret anything about it.
That's powerful stuff. And yeah, you took me back with the hits from the street. Like these youngins, they don't know nothing about that. They don't know nothing about that.
Right.
That's all right right there. Now you took me back right there. Hits from the street. Like that was just a time, the early 2000s.
Absolutely.
Hits.
Absolutely.
See this world, 106 in Park. They don't know nothing about that. They're too young for
Absolute rap, like Rap
that.
City, the basement, like
Mm.
all of that.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Powerful stuff. So you make your way down to the Alabama State. And I know you were saying you already had family in Alabama, but I still have to ask, did you experience any cultural shock coming from the Midwest to the dirty South?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. What was it like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir is absolutely a culture shock to me because that's not something you say where I'm from. And it is even still attributed to, being a remnant of slavery.
Hmm.
And so people kind of look at you like and roll their neck back, like, no, my name is such and such. Like, don't yes, ma'am, me, don't no, sir, me kind of thing like that. So that was a culture shock going from here to there. Like I knew to say yes or, say no. I wasn't going to be like, yeah, no, because I couldn't say that to my parents. It's like you say yes or you say no. But it was like, yes, ma'am. No, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. Like, okay, all right. I'm fine with it. I'm not offended by it. When you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do. And I
Mhm.
never saw it as a negative thing. I just saw it as, okay, it's just another level of respect. So that was one thing. And then certainly the Southern twang and the Southern slang. Uh, that was a whole nother ball game. And some things, almost 20 years in, I still don't understand. But if I go back home to Cleveland, they say, "Oh, girl, you sound just like a Bama. You so country. You've been there for so long." I'm like, I have. It's home at this point. This is my home. I love it here.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Powerful stuff. So just yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and just that southern twang that now you done picked up on. So look how things have
Yes,
played out.
yeah, absolutely. But
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
all good stuff. Like you said, is good stuff for sure. And the things that people that I see now, in their mid and late 30s, kind of like we are, if you will, that they're craving, as far as community. Community is so strong here. And because I grew up with that kind of community, with that kind of village, just in my family alone, and neighbors as well. But I've always had a village, so that wasn't a culture shock to me. Somebody was always in your business, kind of thing, not like in a bad way, but a look out for you kind of way, if that makes sense. Like somebody always knew what was going on. So that's one thing I appreciated, having people kind of continue to rally around me in the name of love. You know what I'm saying? Like, I appreciated having that growing up, and I appreciate it still kind of carrying on here with just how people are as a whole.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Community is everything, and it's just great hearing you talk about that. Just coming from a great village and coming down to Alabama and just being embraced by the city, and of course, Of course, you attended the Alabama State University, graduated from the Alabama State University. So I want to ask you, Adila. I know your dad was pro HBCU, but just from your perspective, once you got down here and experienced the HBCU experience, what was that experience like for you?
It felt like home. It felt like home. It felt like warmth. It felt like love. It felt like acceptance. It felt like where I was supposed to be. It felt like anything else. If I would have done anything different, it would have been a mistake. It felt intentional. Everything about it is purposeful. I have no regrets because I know from the time I pulled up at 915 South Jackson Street and walked into Girls Benson, I knew that's where I was going to be. I had no doubts. No doubts. No doubts.
Hmm. Yes, ma'am. That HBCU experience is nothing like it. And the thing I enjoyed about it the most was getting a chance to meet people from all over. I'm from Montgomery, so of course I met people from the South, people from the Midwest like yourself, people from the East
Mhm.
Coast, the West Coast. And it's just so cool how we all came from different cities, different backgrounds, and it just came together on South Jackson Street and created those lifelong memories and relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was one of my favorite things as well. Like, some of my very best friends are from Miami, Florida.
Hmm.
At no other point in time would I have just a group of friends from Miami, Florida, and everything is cool. Like, where you going? I'm going to Miami. You got money? No, I got friends though.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It's powerful stuff, nothing like it. So present day, you are the founder and owner of Village Maternal Services. What you got going on over there?
so Village Maternal Services focuses on birth, breastfeeding, and beyond. Essentially providing birth doula services as well as that lactation services to expectant families in the Montgomery area, or excuse me, Montgomery and the surrounding area. Right now is National Breastfeeding Month. Yay. So we're celebrating National Breastfeeding Month. We usually do our big shebang at the end of the month. Be looking for that to drop over on the Village Maternal Services page on Facebook. I'll tell you the first thing that we have going on at that part is we have a partnership with UAB and the Alabama Maternal Health Task Force. We are hosting a listening session to know what moms want. So this partnership is it's research going on in the background, but it's real. It's pretty chill, pretty low key, just a comforting space. We're welcoming moms from all across the area of all ages. It doesn't matter if you have brand new babies or if your baby is 25. We want to hear from you and we want to hear those experiences so we can start to put the pieces together as to what the maternal health care scene looks like. We know what it looks like in numbers. We got a lot of work to do. We know what the data looks like, but we want the human experience. So that's what we're getting to And we're excited about that. Every single seat has been filled. Every single seat has been filled. So we'll be taking in moms and, dads and the children if they have them. We're going to feed them. We're going to make sure they get paid for their time to be there. It's happening at the downtown library, the downtown branch of the Montgomery City County Public Library. If you want to pull up and you didn't get a chance to register, you are more than welcome to do so. We'll have a plate for you.
Wow, you got a lot of great things going on with Village Maternal Services, and just hearing you talk about what you get to do for expecting mothers and what you're doing present day. I could just hear that passion in your voice. So what exactly inspired you to want to come into this space and provide these services?
That's a great question. I get asked that often. Being a doula or a lactation professional was not something that was on my radar. However, I have a love of two things, and that's people and science. And so that's one of those things where I got a chance to put the two things that I enjoy together. I've did it before, or done it before, if you will, in a previous career. If anybody knows me from way back when, I was a classroom teacher. And I've taught every science that you can possibly think of, with the exception of physics. And again, I had a chance to put my two things together that I enjoy: people and science. And so I get a chance to do this. But what led me specifically on this route is my friends started having kids. And I just had a chance to kind of walk alongside them. And if it meant, folding up laundry, making sure I could bring over some food or just cook some food there for them, or whatever the case may be, just to make sure they were okay, just being a friend, I would do that. But my friends started having kids a few years before I did. And I started having kids and I had a gravy experience, like both times, well, especially the first time, really both times. But I started having children and my friends continue to have kids. And I'm like, one of these things is not like the other. I gave birth to my daughters, uncomplicated, had great experiences overall. But the problem was I knew that I was an anomaly. I was the one of those things is not like the other. My friends are having these experiences that aren't adding up to me. And the reason I say that I was an anomaly is not because it was all perfect, but because I had a provider who I was already friends with. So I kind of almost expected preferential treatment in some regard, just like, oh, well, that's a friend of, Dr. such and such, or whatever the case may be. But I had that kind of there. They didn't quite have those same experiences, and it could be because of that or otherwise. However, I've always done my due diligence, but I knew there were some breaks, there were some cracks, there was some stuff that wasn't quite adding up. And I'm listening to my friends' lived experiences and now my cousins' lived experiences. And I'm like, something isn't adding up. Granted, I did all the research, all the education while I was sitting up pregnant. Was it that? Could have been. Was it the provider? Could have been. So now I'm sitting here and I'm looking. This isn't necessarily just a human experience thing. We're dealing with something systemic. And that's where it shifted for me. This is something I already have a love for, but we're also dealing with something systemic. As somebody told me, said, you advocate for everybody. I said, because right is right. You know what I'm saying? Right is right. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you have going on. Right is right. And I guess I do kind of advocate for everybody. So granted, my love of science and my love of people, but my concern, I didn't come in trying to be a superhero, but to make sure that people can still have dignity, have their dignity intact with these life-changing experiences that they're having. You know what I'm saying? You're welcoming in a new life. No matter how the baby gets here, you're welcoming in a new life. That's a life-changing experience. If you're dealing with insurance, they call that a qualifying life event.
Right.
So it's a qualifying life event. We still want to keep your dignity intact in the process. And when we're looking at systemic issues, as we do with so many other things, these women are leaving, these men are leaving, these families are broken, and their dignity isn't intact when it's all over. And the only thing you can say for it is, well, at least you got a healthy baby. But healthy parents matter too.
Hmm. Yeah, you just dropped some heat, you dropped some bars, and everything you just broke down. I appreciate you for sharing that. Just that love for people, love for science, got you into this space, looking at the systemic issues in our community, in the Black community. We can call a spade a spade. Just being able
Yeah.
to identify that, and I think that's so cool and that's so commendable, Adila. The fact that you had a great experience both times, and you still had compassion to want to give back or help the next person, the next woman have a great experience because it would have been very easy for you to say, you know what, I had a great experience. I'm just gonna move on with my life. I'm not gonna worry about what's going on in my culture. So I just want to commend you and give you flowers for giving back. That's amazing.
Well, I appreciate you, Doug.
Yes, ma'am. So whenever I have entrepreneurs on the platform, I like to talk about three things: aha moment, action, and audacity. You pretty much already broke down your aha moment in terms of what sparked the idea, what got you into the space, your love for people and science. So from the time you had your aha moment and you realized what was going on and you wanted to be the change agent behind it, how long did it take you to take action to come up with a name and actually get started with the business?
Oh man, that's wild. It took me a minute to come up with the name or how I wanted to put it together. So I can't give you an actual time frame, but I knew because of, as I mentioned, the type of village that I had and the type of village that I'm in, I knew village was going to be somewhere in the name because that's what it is. It really does take a village. You know, people always say to raise up a child, but it takes a village to just uphold people. That's just what that is. So Village Maternal Services is the name. I kind of gave you my aha moment. My feet were not swift to action. I have to shout out a dear friend of mine who is in this same profession, the same line of work. I'm gonna give her her flowers too. She's one of my sisters from Tuskegee. She's up in Philly. Her name is Portia Holland Otumba. Portia would look at me and would see the things I'm doing. She's like, sis, you need to be a doula. I'm like, I'm not doing that. For what? She was like, because you already do all of these things. You already do the work. You just don't have an official title. She's like, you really need to be a doula. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I'm talking about year after year after year after year. It probably took me 3 or 4 years of nudging before I finally said yes and went through and got formal training and all of these different things in place. You know, I got my training to become a birth doula, completed my trainings and, gained my credentials in lactation. I probably have more credentials as than I can think of when it comes to lactation for sure. But I went ahead and I was just like, no, I'm fine, I'm okay. But the nudge wouldn't end, and it wasn't her. I really believe God just used her to push me into another space.
Hmm. And that's amazing. And it's so ironic that you were telling that story, how your friend pushed you. And then that's part of the village. Like it takes it, like you were saying earlier, like we think of a village, it takes a village when we're children. It also takes a village when we're adults, just to uphold an individual, like you were talking about earlier. And it's hats off to her for being in your village and for holding you accountable and say, hey, you already doing the work. Launch the LLC. That's powerful.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. So that last portion, that audacity, it's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to put action behind it, but it's a whole nother beast to put it out to the world to be praised or criticized. That's where the audacity comes in my opinion. And it sounds like your good friend from Philly gave you the audacity to put Village Maternal Services out to the world.
Absolutely. I have not only her, but I got a few people who I've picked up along the way. One of my mentors, her name is Nakia Lawson. It was she she poured so much into me, so much into me. So where she made me believe I could fly. She kept me at her, she gave me wings. My friend pushed me and she helped me fly. She gave me wings to say, hey, here's where this is, and you don't have to, be broke transitioning out of a job or whatever the case may be. You can do these things. She coached me in business. She trained me, but she coached me in business, and she didn't let my hand go. And I had looked other places for business mentorship, but because it's so niche, I couldn't find any help anywhere around. And so this lady from out of Dallas, Texas, on the phone with me, on Zoom with me, in my ear, making sure I'm doing everything I need to do, everything that I need to do. She gave me wings and she was able to let my hand go. I can fly on my own now. And I'm grateful for that. I don't have any doubts about myself. I don't have any imposter syndrome going on. They would often remind me, you know what you're doing. Keep showing up for the people in your community like you do. You know what you're doing. Staying in trainings, keep learning, stay a forever student, handle your business. You know what you're doing.
Power of a mentor, like you said, just putting that belief, just instilling that belief, just giving you the belief that you could fly and just breaking away from that imposter syndrome because it's real. Imposter syndrome is real. It's a deadly disease. Well, I ain't gonna say it's a deadly disease, but it's a disease of some sort because you get into this whole notion of do I belong? And all along you're overqualified. So hats off to your
Right.
mentor for instilling that belief in you. That's amazing.
Shout out to her.
Yes, ma'am. So making that transition out of the classroom and into what you're doing now in maternal health. So when you got ready to make that transition, did you let any of your colleagues know what you were doing, or did you just take the leap?
I kind of took the leap. One of my colleagues, and he's passed on now. He kind of knew what I was doing because he started to see me popping up on, on different webinars and seeing my headshot in different places. He's like, I remember him telling me, he said, man, he said, I feel like that took off kind of quick. And I'm like, I said, it hasn't been in your face long, but it's been in the making. And when I told him I left, he said I was leaving. He said, hats off to you. I will never forget that. He said, hats off to you. He said, I can tell you love it.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, I sounds good to me. Just took the leap. One colleague gave you some encouragement, showed some love. That's what it's all about. I mean, so that's good that you were able to make that transition. And like you said earlier, your love for people, love for science. So it was a seamless transition into what you're doing present day. And you've done great things with Village Maternal Services, and I'm sure great things are coming down the pipeline, which leads to my next portion, vision. What are some of your short term and long term goals for the business you feel comfortable sharing?
I definitely want to grow and scale the business. I want to be in a position where I can mentor or coach more doulas, particularly in the Montgomery area, because we need them. So very needed. I've had a chance to host doula trainings, a couple so far, in partnership with my mentor, who's been really amazing. She'll come I'll bring her the people. She'll come in and train them, and she's done it in such a way where it's almost like a give back for her. So that's been really beneficial. And we've gotten a few good doulas turned out from those trainings. I want to get more. And I want to be able to offer a few more things as far as lactation services go, just so we can figure out a way to maximize for people whose insurance wouldn't normally cover it. Lactation services are not covered by Alabama Medicaid. Lactation services are kind of hard to be covered, even with Blue Cross in Alabama, which is the number one supplier of health insurance. You have other companies, maybe like larger companies or larger entities, who will cover doula services and cover lactation services, but just figuring out creative ways to possibly do some type of incident billing or something like that, which will require partnership with a physician to be able to do that. I don't see that being a hard feat, but I know it's a mountain to climb.
Yes, ma'am. Those are great goals, short term, long term, and I have no doubt you'll make them all come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Ma'am, as we wrap up the podcast, I want to ask the $1 million question. I started this podcast to highlight the greatness connected to the city of Montgomery, whether you were born here or lived here for a significant period of your life, be it college, military, or work. You come into the Gump to attend and graduate from the Alabama State University, and you currently reside here, operating in business here. I want to ask you, Adila, what do you appreciate the most about the city of Montgomery?
How I've been embraced. I appreciate how I've been embraced. I appreciate not just myself, but my husband, my children, with us all having that embrace of just community. Like, I appreciate that so much. I appreciate knowing that my child can walk out the door and anything she aspires to be, anything they aspire to be, they can, because they see it in themselves. Montgomery has every version of every kind of professional that looks like us. And I appreciate that so very much. It's not something that I ever saw, not ever saw in all of my life until I came to Montgomery, Alabama. It's so rich here in love and so rich in opportunity. I appreciate that about Montgomery.
Yes, ma'am. Powerful stuff. So how can the people connect with you, Adila? What are your social media handles?
Absolutely. Follow us on Facebook, Village Maternal Services.
Too easy. And of course, I'll put all of that information in the description of the episode. Hey, Adila, thanks again for the conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Good people, that concludes another dope episode of the Gumptown Podcast. In the meantime, in between time, y'all know what to do. Be blessed, be safe, but most importantly, have the audacity to be you. Go on.